Okay, so this shirt right here, it's Madison Cunningham shirt. I think I've said this before, but it's kind of my yellow flannel. And it's been a minute since I did an album review, but fall has brought an onslaught of new albums that I really need to talk about. And first and foremost is this one. In the last couple years, if you were to just ask me, what am I most looking forward to in life? I'd probably say some family stuff, of course, some milestones, some anniversaries, some birthdays, some trips, things with my wife and kids. Then in like the fourth or fifth spot would be a new album from Madison Cunningham. As a really sad fan of the Minnesota Vikings, who will probably never get to the Super Bowl again, this is my Super Bowl. Because Madison's songwriting talent, her musical chops have been blatantly obvious to me since I heard her first official album, Who Are You Now, in 2019. One of my most listened to albums of the past 5 years for sure. And one that immediately comes to mind if someone hands me the aux chord. With its elevated singer-songwriter paradigm, you got some jazz, some blues, some folk, some pop influences, some 90s alternative rock in there. Artists like Jeff Buckley, Fiona Apple, Joni Mitchell, these are the obvious comparisons. Not only in the vocal timbre, the lyrical depth, but also in the musical sophistication. Straight up weird chord voicings and modulation and tricky rhythms and low guitar tunings like C standard, I think she uses. These things set her playing apart, and artists took notice, like Jacob Collier, like John Mayer. And live, she's perfect. I mean, there are very few artists with her level of control and intonation vocally. And this overall refinement of her writing and playing just makes her a real shiny beacon of hope in the midst of a lot of musical mediocrity. 2022's sophomore album Revealer just continued that same standard, a tight 45-minute indie rock record with, like Who Are You Now, a ton of radio-worthy hooks like Hospital, like Anywhere, touching ballads like Life According to Rachel, plus some new influences started to reveal themselves on this album, like the song In From Japan, which is just so Rufus Wainwright's Poses album to me, and Collider Particles, which brought the Radiohead. This is the point I started to realize that maybe I like Madison's music so much because she likes the music I like. And to hold us off on this new solo album, last year she released a super fascinating collaboration with Andrew Bird, where they covered the entirety of the album Buckingham Nicks by Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, and it was called Cunningham Bird. All the while, she had this ace up her sleeve, the third album, Ace. And the first single was a statement of intent that she'd be leaning away from the guitar heroism of past records into a much more understated, piano-driven sound because, of course, she plays that too. And I need to start there because Madison actually released this song about a month ago via text to all her fans, which I just thought was a really fun, really exciting, and cute way to promote the music. Very intimate. And the moment I heard that piano part, I was transfixed. This is a piano ballad that has a lush string arrangement that's just like the fine wine to this filet mignon of a song. A perfect song from beginning to end. Madison's voice just swaying and swelling in and out of this melody. It is enchanting. I've been singing this song constantly since it came out. I can pretty safely say it's my song of the year, if not one of my favorite singer-songwriter songs of all time. It also introduces the main theme here on Ace, which is Madison coming out of divorce, the collapse and rebirth and, shattering into form, as she puts it. I think she was 27 when that happened, so fairly early to get divorced, at least in our modern culture. But in the Christian evangelical culture that Madison's from, getting married at 19 and 20 is pretty common. And this album's just thick with poetic, very personal reflections, not only reflecting on the past, but also these very raw emotions that feel present, like on the songs Break the Jaw, like on Take Two, very angry and biting at times. Take Two is another delicate piano ballad on this album. There are a few of them with the most gorgeous woodwind and brass parts. I love the way it ebbs and flows from moments of very direct melody to these flutters of chaotic instrumentation. And while there's the softness of acoustic instrumentation, the parts themselves feel very stern and serious and grave. The end of the song Shore is another moment like this. You just feel swept up in the bitterness and other darker emotions as the piano just repeats this foreboding bass line. The woodwinds are swirling, the cymbals are crashing, the toms are rolling like thunder. The album's peppered with these maelstroms of sound that never get too avant-garde, never get too chaotic. They always come back to a beautiful song, a beautiful melody. Shore is one that really leans into the Joni Mitchell sound, and I can hear how some might think it's a little too similar, but I hear Regina Spektor, artists like that as well, in the ornate piano lines, the head voice. But it's another vocal melody that's just perfect. I mean, Madison's vocal melodies across the board are amazing. I mentioned My Full Name and Shore and Take Two. There are lots of these low-key cuts on the album. Mummy is another one. Although I love them, I do find myself just wanting a little bit more of the rock and blues grit of previous songs, previous albums. Pin It Down comes to mind, Trouble Found Me, Hospital. If you're a fan of that rockier, guitar forward side of Madison, then I can see how Ace might be a little bit of a disappointment. It's definitely her softest, folkiest record. And I am down when artists go in that chilled out direction, and tone things down a little bit for something softer. Carrie and Lowell is my favorite Sufjan album. But I do find the slightly more driving stuff on Ace to be really refreshing and wanting a little bit more of that, which was unexpected. I kind of knew going into this album what it was going to be, but you get a song like Wake, which is so beautiful with Robin Pecknold from Fleet Foxes. It even sounds a lot like a Fleet Foxes song. It's really perfect for their two voices. Amazing song. But in the course of the record, in the full context, by this point, I'm kind of wanting something a little bit different. So I feel like it's undermined slightly by the context of the whole album, even though I love the song. The song Skeletry brings a much needed oomph to the first half of the record, though. The chorus goes so hard, especially when she sings that line, I think it's like, or long enough for us to break it, or something like that. And this album's filled with tiny little musical choices that are so prog, like in Skeletry, when she's in the second verse and she syncopates that one line about the father. It's like the first time it's straight, and then the second time it's different, and just little things like that. In fact, if you're into progressive rock and you have an open mind, you can get past the folk singer-songwriter aesthetic if that's not your usual thing, then I think you'll find tons of good stuff on this album. There are so many little goodies and nuggets that I'm just at the beginning of kind of excavating. To these very grandiose, what sounds like a cello line, just low and menacing. Then there's Break the Jaw with that stuttering groove, that buoyant bass line, and the chorus. It's very prog folk. The chorus really opens up. You feel like you're riding on a current, on a sea turtle's back, like Nemo, I guess. But it's like an angry sea turtle. And while these aren't like distorted guitar-centric songs, there are so many great guitar moments nonetheless. I think like Invisible Chalk is like this classical arpeggiation masterclass with just a beautiful fluidity in the playing. There's dynamics, there's the phrasing, the breathing. It feels like it's got lungs, the instrument. I've mentioned this ebbing and flowing a few times about the album, and I'm realizing that is kind of the musical equivalent of the theme, the duality. You get ups and downs dynamically, tons of contrast. Her main collaborator is producer Robbie Lakritz, who I think worked really closely with her on this album, if not previous ones as well. And they do a great job just punctuating little moments while not getting in the way of Maddie's voice and her lyrics. I've mentioned brass and woodwinds. There's definitely that orchestral flavor to the album that's in the tradition of like the moody blues. It also sounds a lot like kind of that acoustic sound of Apple Venus Volume 1, the XTC album, which I'm a deep fan of Madison, so I know she really loves that album, and I can hear that influence as well. The back third of the album, After My Full Name, is more of a grower than a shower. The songs aren't as immediately catchy, but it's only been 3 days, and I find myself still compelled to go back and just figure out all the intricacies. The album's very cohesive sonically. It has a vibe. It sounds like it's coming out at the right time. It's got that crisp air of October, maybe the first winter chill of November. The overall quality in every aspect, songwriting and performances and production, arrangements, so on and so on, is so above the status quo. I think she's just operating in her own league entirely, which is why this album's a 9 out of 10 for me. And I just hope that Madison gets the coverage, the plaudits, the reach that she deserves with this album, because despite opening for some really big acts, Mumford & Sons, Harry Styles, for God's sake, despite being a favorite musician of so many musicians, a favorite guitar player of so many guitar players, she still feels wildly underrated. Wildly. So thank you, Madison, for sharing this part of your journey with us for this music. This album is really special. I'm just going to keep spreading the word where I can. If you haven't heard her yet, you need to. I'll say it again. I'll be coming back soon with just a big drop of some other new albums I've been listening to in the last month or two. Lots of great stuff there. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching.